talk to me about a little bit about the victim versus victor mentality. I mean, I think this is something we hear a lot about, but I feel like there's an energy level. When we talk about this confidence, we talk about taking the movement steps, just progressing from this point of the conversation. I've had several conversations in the last week with the victim mentality, just family or friends or challenges, and you're trying to bring them out of this to progress to that next level where they can start to have the right movement. How has that been something that you've helped people achieve or get through?
Great question. Well, I think because let's go back to the conversation we had prior to this a second ago and how it leads into this. We said, without movement, nothing gets done. And then movement starts creating confidence. But I think there's so much out there that tells us, go do, go do, go do. Here's what you need to do. Not enough conversation happens of why am I not moving? What's causing me not to move? And it's rarely a willpower issue, is what I've come to learn. That it's very rarely a willpower. And then where does willpower come? Well, willpower comes from the vision, the ability to vision an outcome and the accompanying dopamine that comes, which gives you that power, because dopamine is secreted in the anticipation of reward, and vision creates anticipation. So it's a beautiful sort of connection. But if somebody cannot envision an outcome and pushing forward to something, it feels purposeless. And when there is no expected outcome, there's no dopamine to sort of motivate you and say, hey, you got this. And so then we go, okay, well, we know that people who play the victim role are far less successful than those who take ownership. Okay, we know that. The challenge is those that don't know they're in victim mode, don't even realize they're there. They don't have the self-awareness yet to realize they've been playing that. And I will say this, no one's immune to that. There's no one immune. I've been talking about this for over 30 years. And just 2 weeks ago, I was like, man, I was playing the victim on a certain aspect of a certain slice of the pie in my life. And I was so convinced that I wasn't. And that's the scary part. And so to me, you say, okay, when it comes to speaking and influence, part of the process that we take, which is very, very different, is I can teach you body language, sequencing, timing, skills, how to stand on stage, the speeches to say, all of the formulas. I can put the chess pieces in play, but if you're playing with an empty soul, meaning you're not connected to what's going on, what good is that? What good is that? You're going to achieve a couple things, but there's no depth to who you are. And so there's no real influence. That's the influencer world has figured out a formula on the aesthetic and the sequencing and the marketing of the world. But I can't tell you how many quote unquote influencers I work with to get on stage and just cannot get a stage presence because there's no editing in a live stage. You have what you are is what you are. And so then we go, okay, so the victim versus the victor. Let's take one more deeper look at that. Part of the process, I think, of leadership and that growth through the leadership process is self-reflection and contemplation of what my life has taught me. Well, the one thing I know every human has in common is suffering, difficulty, and adversity. Not everybody has success in massive ways, but we've all struggled with something. And we go, okay, and some of us have struggled and have even larger or bigger tragedies than others, but everything's relative. So that's why comparison really does nothing, unless you want to get perspective, which helps. But we say, okay, let's take a look at how do we look at life as it happened to me, instead seeing it, how does it happen for me, which comes from an idea called amor fati or amor fati. And amor means love, fati means fate. And so when you look at amor fati, you look at the love of one's life or the acceptance of life as it is, not as you wish it would have been. And so what does that mean? It means it says, okay, do you love who you are currently? And most people will say, if they're going through some level of training, yes. I said, wonderful. Then by definition, you have to love the formula that created who you are. And that includes the tragedies. That includes the abuses, the whatever you want to, the horrible parts of you are part of the formula that created you. And here's the biggest rationale for amor fati is you can't change the past. So why not find a way to love it? And if you can love it, take ownership. There is no victim in that. There's a thank God I got cut from my basketball team because it got me into sales. Thank God, fill in the blank, because it created fill in the blank. And even though it was hard and somebody may have died, you may have lost somebody, you hurt somebody greatly. Thank God for the lesson, because it gave me the compassion, the empathy, whatever the blank is there. And it's not that you wish it on someone, but you at least go back and embrace it as it is.
Yeah, there's a gratitude that you have for the experience. You
Yeah.
know, there's lots of things I look at in my life and in my career that I went through an exercise I've talked about a lot when I wrote my book. Part of the initial brainstorming strategy was to think of all the times I failed. And, you know, I wrote down a bunch of ideas, and then I came home and I asked my wife, and she gave me like 7 more additional things. And I started laughing because I had forgotten them. And when I looked at them, I genuinely looked at all of them as value adds to my life, things that had gotten me where I am today. And they, at the time, they might have felt like complete and disruptive moments where, you know, you don't know the path you're going on, or you don't know why you're in this space, almost like a scatter plot of life that seems like nothing is connected. Then you look
Yeah.
back and it was this linear line straight up to where you are today. And
Yeah.
it's really cool. But it is extremely valuable. I think a lot of children, as they grow up, look at their parents in a form of perfection. Like, you kind of grow up thinking your parents are supposed to be like um the person to guide you, which they are, but you look at them in the eyes of perfection a lot of times, right? And then you realize as you get older and you become a parent that they were as imperfect as you are, that
Yeah.
they're failing continuously, that they're doing the best they can.
Yeah.
And the big lessons that they provided are the things, the rocks you hang on to, and some of the things that you might want to discard, they probably want to discard as well. And to your point, how we look back on those items, it just is what it is. So we should be building it to a level where we can actually build off of it, and it's for us, not against us.
Absolutely. And what a beautiful revelation to have when you finally realized that person that spited you was just doing the best they could at the time that they could. And I've come to find that there are very few evil people in this world, because everybody in their minds feels right about what they're doing. And so, and everybody's right in their own mind. And, but when you look at that, so it's very few evil intentional acts, but a lot of evil outcomes and horrible outcomes of things. I've had good intention and done horrible things to people. And so it's to me, I love how you said that, because you have to take a look back. And I imagine that scatter plot, if you were to look at a scatter plot of data that trends upwards, but you were to zoom in so far, all you see is the scatter. You need to zoom out to look at the perspective that over time there's a trend, that it is moving, and life is a sloppy movement up. And it's, as long as it's moving up, we're good, right? There's a sloppiness to it, and there's an imperfection that goes in and out. But you can, it's like looking at the stock market too closely. You got to zoom up. Hold on a second. Even housing, hold on, over 90 years, it's been pretty good.
It's the exact analogy I was thinking of when I got into finance. You know, they gave us this American funds ICA chart, is what it was called. And it was the investment company of America, and American funds, the mutual fund company, had created a mountain chart that went back all the way to, 19 whatever, or early 1900s or 1920 or whatever the number was. I think it was actually the early 1900s, and it was a mountain chart that goes all the way to the date that you're living in. And
Mm,
over a 24-year career, 23-year career, the mountain chart has had years like 99 through 2002, or 2008 and 2009, where
yeah,
people just went completely belly up in so many industries. But if you zoom out, like you're saying, and you look at the mountain chart, it just rides its way up, because you're either growing or dying.
yeah,
And companies have to grow to stay alive, and they can't do anything other than that. If they're just stagnating, they will die eventually. So it's just a really interesting dynamic, and it was always something to help you focus on the big picture versus the small,
yeah,
because life's challenges. The other One other analogy I think is cool is that, um, I would years and years ago, I would run these events and I would have couples in the room and we'd be talking about long-term commitment, right? And I would say, how many people are married in here for 10 years? And I'd have them stand up. And if they were married 10 years or more, go all the way up 10, 20, 30, 40. We get to like 60
Wow.
and there'd be like two couples standing up. And at the end, I'd have everybody sit down, 65 years, whatever the max was. And I'd have people sit down and I would ask them during those years, 65 years, how many of those years were challenging? And or how many days were challenging? And they would say, oh, we had years that were challenging. And I'd say, years? Yeah, one lady was like, 3 years were just awful, but we made it through. And I said, how do you feel about those 3 years today? I'm really glad we worked through it, because today we have 65 years, and they're now probably the example every one of their grandchildren and great grandchildren use as a relationship that is what they want in life. But they forget those years where where they zoomed in so quick, like you're talking about. Like when you get too close, it gets really uncomfortable, but it is what it is.
Yeah. We want to cherry pick the good stuff and we forget. Like, you want the abs, but you don't want the kitchen and the workout. You want the money, but you don't want the late nights and weekends.
If you like clips like this, I have a similar clip here. And if you want to watch the full video, click here.